Guys ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on, Molly, get up. Get up, Molly. Ha! Come on, get. Ha!
A day in early spring. A train of covered wagons moves out through the high country of northern Arizona. Wagon master is Bob Kastelic, social studies teacher at Saguaro High School, accompanied by a selected group of his students. The 80-mile trail winds through the rugged North Country from Bloody Basin to Seven Springs. This experience is hands-on history, recreating today the odyssey of yesterday's Arizona pioneers. For these high school students of the 1980s, it is grassroots education, an American frontier experience.
In preparation for this trip, if you're cutting it in the fundraising, the research, the construction of the wagons, if you're cutting it, you're a survivor. And the only kinds of kids that are going to come on this trip are survivors. The kids that came through the last 3 days of snow and rain and sleet are kids who started out with the idea of, hey, I can cut this if I just set my mind to it. And the rest of the kids either gave up or were told, hey, you're not cutting it, you're going to have to drop off.
I thought it was a real challenge. I didn't think I'd make it through the whole trip, but I did. It was hard. I'm not used to having to pull my weight and work really hard at things. Usually it's given to me or somebody will do it for me, but this time I had a hard time.
I haven't experienced anything like this ever, and I think this will be the only time that I will.
Definitely was a challenge. Definitely.
The trail so far has been extremely rough. We're first now hitting the easygoing part, but it's been rocky, hilly, some really long pulls, steep hills. You can open up the history book and I can tell the kids, okay, now look, wagon trains came across the frontier and people settled, but until you get out here and feel what those people went through, until you're soaked to the skin and you know you got to get up tomorrow morning and put on wet clothes, hook up your teams, until you know what that feels like, I don't think you can really appreciate what those people went through. Last night around the fire we were talking to the kids about heroes, how many heroes you have. People that came across and settled this frontier were heroes, and we just don't get enough recognition. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of determination to stick to going someplace where you don't know your destination. There may be a wagon train behind you that has smallpox. There may be one in front of you that's got cholera. You may be short on water. Your team may be half dead. You may be short on food, and you still drive on. I think that kids are getting an appreciation of history. I think they're getting an appreciation of American heritage, of what those people did in order for us to live out here.
You know, the heroes that we hear about aren't the pioneers. You just say, well, somebody jumped on a wagon, you know, went out west. It's not like that at all. I mean, they went through 6 months of this, and I don't know how they did it, because 1 week, and I'm saying, get me home.
My ancestors must have had to go through a lot to get me out here, and I'm so glad they did.
If I was living back then, it would have been just part of another day. But since, you know, we live in a society that cars are going around and everything, you know, we don't think anything about the pioneers. Now I think every time I watch a John Wayne movie or something like that, I'll say, well, that wasn't like this because this was a lot harder than that. That's because I experienced it.
I can relate to my ancestors because
I can just see how much work they had to go through. I mean, it's almost ridiculous how much they had to do. You know, I don't even have time to do your hair in the morning, to do anything, because you're so busy getting the horses ready, getting the wagons ready, etc., etc.
I don't think I would do it again. I proved myself once, and that's about enough.
I think most of them right now, after all the miserable conditions they've gone through,
Muddiness and wet, cold, and tired and hungry.
do appreciate technology more and appreciate the city life more and the environment they came out of, and that's probably why some of them want to go home.
I don't think we would have lasted another week. Everybody's just about dragging. I know I am.
Conveniences allowed. We don't have any radios or any hair dryers or anything like that. The only modern convenience we really allowed were cameras.
Some of the modern conveniences I missed was the toilet. Really, that was a bummer. And the shower, definitely the shower.
I miss the modern conveniences like a bath and a nice warm bed and a Slurpee from 7-Eleven and a pizza and all the rest of the good foods I miss.
I haven't missed any of the modern conveniences at all. Well, the only thing is a shower. That's about it.
Taking a shower before you go to work.
The only modern convenience I think I missed was a shower. That's about it. You just feel that need to take a shower every once in a while.
We had a lot of breakdowns. We had 5 broken tongues that snapped or bent. We've had some of these wagons are held together with baling wire and hope. This was the spare I had. I had originally had on here a wooden tongue, and these tongues hold on to neck yokes and the single trees and the double trees in the back. Now we broke 5 of these. They just snapped in half, and once those go, you can't go anywhere. So they prevented us a lot of times from making any kind of mileage at all. These are double trees. The double trees are connected to the traces, and the horse pulls on the traces, and the traces are connected to the single tree, and the single tree is connected to the tongue. Okay, and the tongue is really the steering mechanism of the wagon, and the horses or the mules are pulling these single trees, and hopefully they're pulling them in unison. Okay, and back here we have the axles. The axles are connected inside to the wheels and the wheel hubs. Very interesting thing about the wheels, if you look closely on them, are dished to prevent the wheel from snapping and take the pressure and the pounding on the roads. These are the inside here is the felloe. It's called a felloe, and the felloe is banded by the steel rim, and these are the spokes and the hubs, and inside the hubs are grease packs. We constantly have to keep those checked so that the metal is spinning freely inside. There are no ball bearings in here. It's just metal spinning on metal. Now normally we'd have brakes, but this wagon has lost its brakes, and normally the brakes would hang right in here. This down here is the reach, and the reach connects the front axle to the back axle, and it can be adjusted depending upon the size of the bed. Okay, back here we have the rear wheels, and in some wagons the rear wheels are bigger than the front wheels. On this particular wagon, they're just a hair bigger than the back than the front wheels. Riding in this wagon is an experience that you'll never forget. It's a bone-jarring ride. We happen to put a saddle blanket up here to comfort the posterior a bit. As you can see, this is the footrest that's been baling wired together. It seems like about every half a mile, something on one of the wagons breaks. This thing's been replaced a number of times. It's hard to get up into the wagon, and it's very difficult to get down, especially if you want to get down quickly. The seat does have springs on it, and the springs are connected to the sides of the wagon. On this particular seat, though, there's no back, and as a result, I've been getting a pretty sore back. Whether or not we hit the destination is really irrelevant. The point is that the lesson is already being taught. I actually think homework would have been a heck of a lot easier, and they probably would have gotten done with it a lot sooner. I don't know, a certain kind of student would opt for this, and a certain kind of student would opt to do homework. In my opinion, I think the student that wants to do the homework, fine, do the homework. Student who doesn't and chooses to do this, fine. But these students out here have done both, and they're doing both because this is an alternate project that is optional to them. And if they want to do this, they're not really getting any credit in the grade book for it. They're choosing to do this for the experience of doing it.
This was a lot tougher than homework. I take about a month of homework over this, but I think I learned more on this trail than I would have in a whole year of school.
I learned how to work together with people and about horses and their characteristics that I didn't know before, and how to get along with the people that I really don't like a lot.
I've never worked as hard as I have in this past week as I have in my whole life. I've just learned so much that this is just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We're never going to be able to do this again, and it's great. I'm glad I got the opportunity to do that.
Cooperation between people and independence, you just can't let something go. You have to get it done yourself, or it's not going to get done. You can't depend on other people. You have to depend on yourself. And we learned to push ourselves to the limit. We went through rain, and it was cold. We were all wet. We all wanted to stop, but we didn't, because we knew that we weren't going to get any place. We were going to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere. So we just pushed on as far as we could. This is definitely worse than homework. This is definitely worse than homework. You're living at 24 hours a day. You know, you go to school from 7:30 to 2:30, and you're through. You can go home and do whatever you want, but you have got to stick it out here every single minute of the day. You've got to be on your toes every minute.
We had a runaway team twice.
Well, once I was coming down a hill, and I was leading the team. I was the very first one, and there was a wagon behind me, and I guess the horses got away from them, and they started to come down right after me.
The horses weren't really broken in, and they weren't really used to us. And I was up with one of the wranglers. We just started going on the trail, and we went up a hill, and then we turned around. We had to turn around and come back. And they started running, and they didn't stop. And this wagon went up on two wheels, and it was very dangerous. It went up on two wheels about 3 different times. And I don't know how fast we were going, about 35 or something. We were cruising, you know, we were very scared. And we finally just stopped it by leading him up on a hill. So they jumped off, and I didn't get hurt or anything because I held on real tight to the wagon, but it was close.
It was really dangerous. One girl was taken home because they weren't sure. She got thrown up the chuck wagon, and they weren't sure if she was badly hurt or not, so they took her home.
Otherwise, nothing really seriously happened.
I'd have to think whatever's out here. I'm not quite sure what's out here. It's something that is bigger than me and bigger than the students and bigger than a lot of what's going on out here, and it's definitely taken care of us. We've been in some tight situations and always managed somehow to pull out of them safely. And from that, I think myself and the students have learned a very good lesson, something that you could sit in the classroom all day and never get, and people talk about, but until you experience it and feel it, you really don't know what they're talking about.
We can have our own adventure story out here by ourselves. I mean, every day, it's like the Big Valley all over again, you know.
The students have raised all the money. It cost about $4,000, excuse me, to put on the trip. And we've had car washes and bake sales and raffles. We've had all sorts of different kinds of fundraisers. We've also had a lot of cooperation from a lot of people. There's, the list would be as long as my arm of the people we need to thank, and you know, the Scottsdale School District for allowing us to go out on the trail. Bob Hendricks, our principal at Saguaro, for having confidence in me and in the rest of the students to go out here and spend a week. You know, there's a lot of people who are behind this project that aren't out on the trail that really need to be thanked, and that I personally really appreciate having behind me, because without their support, without their backing, I'd feel like I'm out here all alone, and I really don't feel like that as a result of knowing those people are back in town, rooting for me, if you would. So those people I definitely have to appreciate and thank. I think that some of the kids probably didn't anticipate the difficulties, they didn't anticipate all the hard work, but I think when they get home, they're going to appreciate the fact that they were given an opportunity to go out and have this experience. And I don't really think any kid's going to come back and say, hey, it was so miserable, I wish I hadn't gone. No, I think they profited a lot from going, and I think they're going to look back and say it was a good experience.
My ancestors must have had to go through a lot to get me out here, and I'm so glad they did.